Welcome back, Principal Matters podcast listeners. This is Jen Schwanke here with my co-host, Will Parker. Hi, Will. How are you?
Hi, Jen. Jen, I'm just going to say this.
Uh-oh.
No, I'm just going to say it out loud because sometimes you think things, but you don't say them in the moment. But I have so much joy doing this podcast with you.
Oh.
and so it's just so fun. Like I'm thinking of all the things I've done this week and like all the things I'm going to do today. And I'm just like, this is so fun.
Right.
To be able to just sit in this room and learn with you. So
I told a friend that recently. This friend said, how do you have time to podcast? And I said, how would I have time not to? It's fun. I sit around and talk. It's the best. I love it.
Well, it is fun. And I appreciate anyone who reaches out to tell us what you enjoy about the show. And in fact, we're getting pretty close to our 500th show. So if you're listening and you want to give us some reasons why you love the show, we might broadcast them out some voices. So open your phone, find a voice memo, and just record 60 seconds of things, email it to us, and we'll think about how we want to do something special. But Jen, who's our guest this week?
Well, this is episode 492. As you referenced, we're getting real close to 500. And this is Dr. Matthew McDaniel will be on the show today. I had such a great time talking to him. Mm-hmm. He is the director of the M.Ed in Educational Leadership Program at the College of Idaho, and really committed to shaping the next generation of school principals. So Definitely stay tuned for that. And your friend Pete also has a message for us today.
That's right, because our question of the week is sponsored by our friend Pete at Summer Pops Math Workbooks, because principals, when students practice math over the summer, their scores go up. So what is your summer math plan? Well, right now is the perfect time to be thinking about that. You can start by ordering free summer workbook samples at summerpopsworkbooks.com. Reach out to my friend Pete there and he'll send you some samples, and it will make your kids' summer math work something that will make next year even better. Jen, today's question came from a listener who, it's funny, off the air, you and I were talking about, should we talk about this?
I know you took it off. You took it off of our notes.
The notes, and you're like, wait, well, I think we should. So because I've just, full disclosure, I have corresponded with this listener since this question, but I wrestled with bringing it to the show. So I'm not going to name names. But the question was, what advice do you have for maintaining a healthy marriage while being an educator? It's such an honest question. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why I wrestled bringing it here, except that I think maybe part of me was like, I don't want people to think we're trying to be marriage counselors.
Right. We are not that. Let's just start by saying that.
So in our limited 5 minutes, what do you think you want to say to this listener?
Well, I think if we have, let's guess that we have, a few thousand listeners right now. I think we have a few thousand marriage stories there, right? Yeah. Everybody's different. Everybody's journey is different. Everybody's partner is different. And so we're not offering any advice. I think what we can acknowledge is that, elementary, middle, high, those jobs are very different. An urban principal, a rural principal, suburban principal, their jobs are very different. And so there is no way that Will and Jen can sit here, even being two people who have long been successfully married. We can't sit here and offer advice, except we can say communication, respect, understanding. What I have learned is cutting your partner a break is critical. It is absolutely critical. My husband and I joke about something, we call it cardboard cutouts, because he's an educator too. He's an athletic director. And, I've got dinner hot and ready. We're all ready to sit down and he's 25 minutes late. And he'll come in, he'll be like, cardboard cutouts. And what he means by that is he was headed to his car. And So we've learned to laugh and joke about it and to not get angry that maybe sometimes the sweet potatoes aren't as hot because somebody just got home later. There was a board meeting. There was a discipline. It's about that communication and respect.
Yeah. I wrote a post about this. Gosh, I looked it up, 2018. Mm-hmm. And I called it Rowing Together, Why Your Marriage Still Matters for Your Leadership. So I know this question was for educators, and I love everything you said, so I'll just add a few thoughts. I'm glad you said that in all of the people listening, we're going to have stories of people who have had healthy marriages and people who have broken marriages and people who aren't married. So we're not trying to speak to everyone's experiences at once. We're trying to speak to ours. But I will say that there's something super important about your family, and especially if you have a partner or spouse, knowing how important they are to you in the middle of everything else that's important to you. And so I'm going to apply this like I would to a teacher or a leader, that your intentions, you can't assume that your intentions are obvious. And so one thing I would just say is, if you haven't done this in a while, circle back to the people you love the most or that person, and just let them know what you think, how you feel. Our life together is super important to me. And so just like Jen said, when you come home and that paper pop-up is puts you off course, say it out loud, to let that person know. Be intentional about the way you prioritize that person. So just like I tell educators and leaders, show me your calendar of all those things you prioritize. Make sure that you're putting things on there for you and your family, in the person that you love the most. Without going too deep, let that person be a mirror to you sometimes. If they see you're getting burned out, if they see that maybe you're getting impatient, whatever that is, take that feedback as an expression of love. And then, Jen, I'll just point to one resource. If anybody wants to kind of read something that helped us when Missy and I were young marrieds, we read the 5 Love Languages, The Secret of Love That Lasts by Gary Chapman. And I know he's done a version of that for work now too. Right. But it's really helpful to learn how to communicate in a way that someone else likes to be communicated with, or listen to them. And so sometimes just doing a little bit of that kind of work together on reading and learning about yourselves and that other person can be a helpful way to keep that relationship rich.
And I would also say, if you aren't interested in, or your partner is not interested in doing that work, and if you are in a really unhappy partnership, or you're not safe, please reach out for help. Mm-hmm. I think Will and I are both lucky enough to have partners that we do want this to work, right? And but it's hard work. It's hard work. And if you are not in a situation that's sustainable, or you are finding every day you dread leaving school and going home, to whatever situation that is, reach out for help. There's a lot of wonderful resources. Most districts and schools have an employee assistance program. Reach out to that and talk to someone who's qualified to help navigate that, because this job is too hard to go home and be miserable. So get help. It's
I'm so glad you said that, Jen. Well, I know we're going to jump into our guest speaker. So thank you, listener, for sending that question. And Jen, I'll put a link to the post I wrote several years ago just about my own reflections on marriage as an educator. But how can people stay connected with your resources?
Yep. Find me at jenschwanke.com. You can email me through a contact form there, or just subscribe to my newsletter.
And you can find today's post, the show notes, more information about our guest at williamdparker.com. And until next time, thanks for doing what matters.
Thanks, everyone.
Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. Why is IXL used in 95 of the top 100 U.S. school districts? Because it works. IXL is research proven to benefit all student populations, including English language learners and special education classrooms. IXL is an all-inclusive online learning and teaching solution for K-12 that accelerates achievement, saves teachers time, and more. This one platform helps you accomplish what normally would require dozens of other tools. For example, as students practice skills, IXL automatically differentiates learning to help them master concepts at their own pace. Teachers get real-time insights into how students are performing so they can provide timely support. What I love about IXL are the personalized SAT and ACT study plans. Students just need to enter the most recent test score, and IXL automatically generates a custom list of skills they should work on to improve their scores. Discover what IXL can do for your school. Visit IXL.com/PM today.
You're listening to Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast.
Welcome back to the Principal Matters Podcast. This is Dr. Jen Schwanke, co-host of the podcast. And today, listeners, we are diving into a topic that is at the absolute heart of school transformation. And here's the question. How do we as leaders shift our school's culture from a collection of individual classrooms, a culture of I and my students, to a truly collaborative community that's built on we and our students? And another question would be, how do we build that collective efficacy and deprivatize our practice in a way that feels supportive and not evaluative? To help us explore this, we have a perfect guest. Dr. Matthew McDaniel is the director of the Master's in Educational Leadership program at the College of Idaho, where he is actively shaping the next generation of school principals. But he's not just coming from the world of academia. Matt has over a decade of experience as a principal in both traditional public and charter schools, and his journey began in the classroom as a secondary music and Spanish teacher and as a district ENL coordinator. He's seen school culture from multiple unique angles. He's also the founder of Cresvia Education Consulting, and in what is the highest compliment for us, has been a longtime listener of this podcast. So Matt, it is an absolute honor to have you on the show. Welcome to Principal Matters.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks to Will as well for a fantastic opportunity for us to broaden our understanding as school leaders.
Yes, I agree. I'm grateful to Will every day. And, we do so much work with principals. I think it's such a gift that you're here to talk about principal preparation. And I'm sure there are many problems with your job, as there are with all jobs, but you kind of have my dream job, Matt. That's pretty phenomenal to be able to shape principals. So it's such an honor to have you. And you mentioned you'd been a listener for several years. So you've had a fascinating journey in education, from secondary teacher to an ENL coordinator to a principal. Now, how has that multifaceted journey shaped your focus on moving schools from a culture of I to we?
Yeah, it's a really great question, and one that I think we live in often as educators, as leaders for sure. But I think for me, that started as a teacher at a small school. And I think a lot of listeners can probably relate to this idea where we wear many hats. And by default, that ends up meaning that collaborative opportunities are maybe limited. So I always felt like I was working on a team of one. And I really craved an opportunity to see other people do the work. And I was confident as a young teacher, maybe overly confident as a young teacher, in thinking that I knew how to do all the things the right way. But as soon as I had an opportunity to see other people do it and do it better, to be honest, it was kind of, an earth-shaking moment for me to realize that if I could learn from other people and see what other people were doing, it would make me a better teacher. So it really stemmed from that idea of one, seeing really great teachers not always share their practice, which was a little frustrating, and two, seeing teachers who had challenges not have an opportunity to learn from great people. And so for me, that putting all that together meant it was a chance for us to work towards a common good and kind of stop talking about my students and open that door into our students as an organization so that we could collectively get better.
Right. Well, I think you've tapped into something I've spoken about quite frequently, which is the undercurrent of competitiveness within teachers. There's only one best teacher, there's only one favorite teacher, so I have to kind of hoard my knowledge and my skills and my experience. And I do think we've made progress with that in recent years, where we're much more open as educators to learning from one another. But this also applies to principals too, which we can get into a little bit later. A lot of times it's a very vulnerable situation to say, I don't know everything, and also please come in and learn from me, to do the two things at the same time.
Yeah, maybe that's our next step in education too. I think we are getting really good at unearthing this collective efficacy concept for teachers. But you hit the nail on the head. We don't have a lot of opportunities as administrators to go see other people actually doing the work. We can go to conferences and share content with each other, but to see somebody in the trenches and learn from them, yeah, maybe that's our next foray.
That's right. Once I decided I was a principal, and I decided I was going to do just that. So I called a friend and I said, can I come watch you run a staff meeting? She said, absolutely. So I went, and everybody in that room started a rumor that I wanted her job. it was thank goodness we were friends and we just laughed at it, but it was a little bit bananas. And I'm glad you're talking about collective efficacy. This is efficacy. When I got my doctorate, the professor I had, Roger Goddard was his name. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm struggling with my words. Roger Goddard was kind of a leader in collective efficacy, and I was blown away by this concept. And you are really kind of on the front lines of this conversation too. You wrote an article in Edutopia that powerfully frames that shift from my to our. So talk to the principal who's listening right now, who feels maybe that their school is stuck in that isolation space. What is a initial manageable step that they can take? And now that you're preparing future leaders, what do you tell them is the critical first move to make when they get the keys to the building?
Yeah, so collective efficacy seems elusive from the perspective of a school leader. We kind of, it feels like we see schools that have it and schools that don't. And sometimes it feels like an insurmountable hurdle to get our team there. So the question of like, where do I start is a fantastic one, and one that I encourage people to start with on the front of trust. So as school leaders, we naturally have a power imbalance, whether we like it or not. The moment that you are given the title of principal, you automatically have an elevated status socially and professionally within your setting. And some people might not like that idea, but that is just the bottom line truth of it. And that erodes trust, unfortunately. That natural positional authority automatically has kind of a me versus them mentality with your staff. I guess if we start with that. And so from a philosophical standpoint, one analogy that I like to use is that of a sports coach, right? And especially baseball. And the reason I say that is if you look at a baseball team, a professional baseball team, we see the manager is wearing a uniform, right? They have a number on their back. They show up in the jersey, but their role is different. And so instead of this idea of I'm the leader, I'm in charge, what we shift to is this idea of I'm part of the team, but my role is different. My job is to help our team be successful and leverage the talents of every single person on our team in a way that benefits us collectively, even though I don't get a chance to go out on the field and play. My role is just different, but I'm still wearing the same jersey. So that's one analogy that I like to start with. Just when talking with my own staff in the past is being able to say, we are a team together. It's not me versus you. I'm not here to change you. I'm here to get the best out of you and find the thing that's going to benefit our team in the very best way. So that's one of the things that I like to start with. I think when we're just trying to understand from a perspective of what that looks like, to start breaking down those barriers a little bit of what leadership actually means.
Well, I'm going to take that phenomenal analogy one step further, because I do a lot of work with collective efficacy. I'll go talk to principal groups about this. And this is the question they ask. Well, they're like, well, yeah, I get it, but how? So taking that analogy, that baseball manager would never say, oh my God, give me the bat. I'm going to go hit. They stand there and they coach and they help the batter, or they wouldn't say to the pitcher, stand aside, I'm going to throw a few. And so I think too often principals have their super cape on and they're like, I'm going to come in and fix. Whereas that's the wrong thing to do. So I love that analogy because it's exactly what good leadership is. I'm with you, but I'm not going to do it for you.
Yeah, and a starting place is literally having that conversation with your group. So not just thinking it, but sitting down in a collaborative setting and talking about it. Actually saying, here's my vision for our work. And that's the second part of it is when people know where you're going, they're more likely to hop on your train. They don't want to get on a vehicle to nowhere. And so that's another starting place. It's just saying, here's who I am and what I'm about and how I want us to be great together. That doesn't seem like this massive actionable thing, but in 60 minutes, you can really turn the trajectory of the culture of your organization by just laying out there who you are and what you're about and how you're going to help everybody find a way to be successful.
That's right. That's right. And Matt, you describe linking walks as a powerful tool for centering school improvement around student voice. So tell us a story about where this practice uncovered a crucial misunderstanding and how it led to tangible and positive change.
Yeah, so linking walks is the idea of collecting census level data from every student in your school. So we often talk about school improvement, and we hear from parents and we hear from teachers, but not that often, and maybe not often enough, do we actually ask the people who are there every single day, who are our learners. And so in one of the schools that I served at as a school principal, we engaged in this process of linking walks 3 times a year, where we would, at the beginning of the year, based on data points that were important to us, that oftentimes had nothing to do with district-driven goals or state-driven goals. They were simply things that as a staff, we felt like we needed to get better at. And the reporting ended there as well. Reporting just ended in-house. It was simply for our own benefit. We would identify 2 or 3 key concepts that we wanted to ensure fidelity with just in-house. And the only people that we asked about it were students. We didn't poll teachers. We didn't poll staff. We didn't poll anybody else. We simply asked every kid who was present on a school day. So if we had 400 kids in our school, we would take one day and we would leverage instructional coaches and district leadership and anybody who we could get in our building, former teachers, substitute teachers, to come in and allow us to collect this data from every single student in our school. And one example that I highlight in the Edutopia article, in fact, is that we had received data on a perception survey, a student perception survey, and one of the questions asked students if they feel safe at school. And we had a really uncomfortably high number of students report that they were not safe or that they didn't feel safe at our school. And I don't remember the number exactly, but it was an alarming number. Maybe 30% of our students reported not feeling safe at school. And for us, that was alarm bells all over the place, right? Like, wow, how can we have a school culture of learning when our students feel like they're not safe at school? So we took that data point and we turned it into a question in our linking walks that was very simple. Do you feel safe at school? And if the answer is no, why? Well, when we collected that data from every single student in our school, 2 total students reported not feeling safe at school. So we uncovered this massive discrepancy that on a perception survey that was required by our state, students reported this really high number or reported a high amount of not feeling safe at school. But when we collected the data, we only had a couple respondents do that. So that was helpful for us in many ways. One, it kind of reconfirmed for us that maybe our students are safer than they had originally reported. 2, how students respond on state-driven perception surveys may not always be accurate. They might be just clicking their way through so they can get to recess or their next passing period or whatever it happens to be. But the most important part is it really helped us understand who felt like they were not safe. And we could have honest conversations with those students about why they reported that. And then we could address it as well. Instead of this flock shoot idea of, well, kids don't feel safe here, so what are we going to do about it? No, we were able to really hone in on the couple of students who were reporting that, and we could address that and even follow up with their families and just say, hey, here's something we're doing to help make sure your child feels safe at school every single day. So that's just one example of the power of that linking walk data that we received.
What a powerful story. As you were talking, I kind of got chills because about 5 years ago, maybe 10, I had almost the exact same experience. We got some data back that it made me nauseous because it was kind of the same question and it was a required assessment. And I thought, this can't be. And so I vowed to sit down with my counselor individually with students. And I think the question was, do you have someone at school, an adult you can talk to? And a lot of them said no. Well, we sat down with them and the kids would look at us like we had 2 heads. They'd be like, well, I talked to my mom, or I have a ton of friends. They had misunderstood this question. And you're right. Had we blown everything up trying to fix a different problem, we wouldn't have been able to hone in on the few kids who were like, yeah, I got nobody. We could fix that. So listeners, I hope you rewind and listen to everything Matt just said, because it is so easy in this era of data-based decision making to make the wrong decisions. It really is.
Yeah, totally. It just
So
helped us unearth the actual problem, like you
that's
noted.
right. That's
And
right.
instead of making a mountain out of a molehill, we were adequately concerned
Right.
enough to make us say we want to ask every kid in our school about this. But then it situated the responses in a much more culturally appropriate
Right.
way for us to respond to.
That's exactly right. And, another thing too about surveys, I don't want to make this podcast about that, but so many times questions are worded for adults, not for children. And that's where you can go down the wrong path. So, this idea of linking walks is also connected to the idea of a ghost walk. So, as a musician, the musician in you knows that performance and practice can feel very personal. How do you advise leaders to frame this practice to build that trust and build curiosity rather than fear or judgment, which truly deprivatizes professional practice? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think, again, you hit the nail on the head. The word is trust. So the ghost walk process is one that allows us to engage in our learning spaces without people present. And that may be daunting. Again, sometimes in our profession, we have educators who are very territorial. We'll just say that. And their space is their space, and their door is closed, and they're not inviting to have people come into their space, even when no one is present. To me, there's extreme value in understanding learning through all the senses. So not just sitting and learning or sitting and listening, but being able to understand a space and the effects it might have on a child apart from the learning that takes place in there is really valuable and important. I've set up this practice in the past where we have a non-evaluative positive feedback form that a teacher or a staff member can take with them at the end of the day in a collaborative opportunity or setting. We've randomly assigned staff members to go be present in a learning space where there's no one else. So it's literally like, Jen, you're going to go to room 217 today, and Will is going to go to room 324, and you are simply going to provide some non-evaluative ahas and wonderings about the space that you were in. And that allows us to go see a variety of different spaces, which is important because, again, we get stuck in our own room too often. And when we enter somebody else's classroom, it feels uncomfortable or awkward. I mean, we don't want that in our learning spaces. That, if we're talking about deprivatization of professional practice, that's the idea that we are working together. It goes back to that team mentality. And it allows us to see, what does learning look like in your space? What is on your walls? What do your students see? What is the angle that they have for a board? What is what's on their neighbor's desk? It's just a really interesting way to be an observer through multiple senses. And the way to start this, I guess, which is a big hurdle, is through voluntary practice. So when I first started this practice in the school setting, I simply polled people and said, would you be willing to let a couple people come check out your space? And there were plenty of no's when I first asked that, of people that said, no way. And I said, fine, you don't have to have people visit, but you're going to visit. Like, that was the other side of it, is if you don't want people to come to your space, that's okay. But I want you to go check out other people's places and see how that looks and see how it feels. And through a couple iterations of that, that really helped build trust, break down those walls a little bit, because it was non-confrontational. It was, the form that we built was meant to be positive and ask some wondering questions. Why did you choose to build your word wall that way? Why did you choose to have that specific item posted on your whiteboard? Why did you choose to locate your desk where you have it? Like, these are just these organizational, physical concepts were something that we hadn't spent a lot of time thinking about, and it really opened up what our teachers saw in other spaces. And all of a sudden, we saw them start to experiment in their own classrooms with things that they kind of borrowed from other people's spaces. And that's exactly what we were hoping for, is to find some best practices and things that were working other places, and just expand the toolbox of what a physical space could offer our students.
Right. I love the way you modeled the tone of those questions too. I've seen this done poorly, and it's when the questions are asked as though I want to catch you not knowing the answer. And so my colleague Samantha is constantly reminding us the Ted Lasso phrase, be curious, not judgmental, because you really do want to know, why did you put your desk there? Or tell me about that word wall, rather than, and why did you put your desk there? We have to approach it. And there's a lot of really good resources out there about coaching and leading with the right tone. So thank you for modeling it. That's critical, really, how we ask those questions.
Yeah, and over a couple years' time, that was able to evolve into an expectation that everybody participated because we
Right.
built that trust over time. And maybe one of the keys to all of this in terms of collective efficacy is buy-in from educators.
Right.
Again, when I talk about that idea of kind of leveling the playing field between a leader in a building and the staff in the building, we hope to neutralize that power imbalance as much as possible.
Right.
And as a leader, because you have the skill set to empower others, you don't feel like you've lost anything in
That's
that. I
right.
mean, the best leaders don't lose anything by delegating and by giving up opportunity for other people to lead. And
Right.
so that's a prime example of what this looks like as well. Having these opportunities be teacher led and let those folks be the ones who are sharing, and me stepping out of the way altogether and just being a learner right along with everybody. I don't pretend as a leader to be an expert in everything that my staff does. In fact, I
Right.
can't be. I'm choosing people better than me to go fill all those roles so that together we can be great. And
Right.
just recognizing that and being willing to own that is really the first step to great leadership.
Well, and you've hit on something that I've started to connect in my own, when I consult with districts, I connect this idea of collective efficacy with the idea of shared leadership. Because if we're giving it away, that is not any indication we can't do it. It's an indication that we believe others can not only do it as we would, but do it better. And so let me make a little skip over to my next question, which is, in your work nurturing emerging leaders, how do collaborative practices become a natural springboard for identifying staff members with leadership potential? And then how does that connect with the work you do, the formal training you provide in an educational leadership program?
Yeah, it's a really great question, and one that's hard for young administrators, right?
Yes.
People who are new to the profession, many feel like, I got to own this. I got to step up. I have to prove my worth. I have to show that I'm a leader and make the hard decisions. And yes, you need to do all of those things. But I think the best pre-service and early career administrators are doing this with a levity that helps other people recognize that their leadership strengths are not in their ability to be authoritarian decision makers, but in their ability to identify great leadership in others. So that's the way that we are going to elevate our organization, is by finding, like I said before, great people who are really great at what they do. And so releasing that I don't know, onus of feeling like you have to do it all. It's very difficult to be a school principal in 2025. And that's just the bottom line. The work is hard and it almost feels impossible sometimes. We talk often about teacher mental health and teacher well-being and what we're doing to support that group of people. I think school administrators likewise need to have that conversation with themselves and be able to identify ways that they can share the load. And sometimes that's just a matter of asking. There are
Right.
people in our organizations who are ready and willing to lead, and they're not going to take your job unless
That's
you're bad at
right.
it. If you're bad at it, then great. Maybe they need to take your job.
Right.
But
Right.
but generally speaking, these are people who want to support you and want the organization to be great. So don't be afraid to offload things that you feel like another person can do in a great way as well. It might not be your way, but it's
Right.
going to be a great way, and that's okay.
That's
So
right.
I think those are all things for us to think about on that front.
That's right. That's right. And that leads us directly into my next question. And listeners, I've been dying to ask Dr. McDaniel this question because to me, it gets to the crux of what you all principals are dealing with. Here, okay, you brought up this idea of, you know, outsourcing some of the work. And that ties to the critical topic of executive function for school leaders. So, this is a role, as you well know, it's defined by constant interruption. How can principals manage their own cognitive load to shape a strong leadership ecosystem? And so, I keep asking you two questions at once. I'm sorry about that. But more importantly, how do you help aspiring principals develop high level executive functioning skills before they're overwhelmed by the daily demands of the job?
Yeah, it's funny. This topic hit my radar a handful of years ago when we spent a lot of time helping students improve their executive function. And we had identified in our school setting that executive function was generally weak among our earliest learners. So working in an elementary school setting, we felt like our kindergarten students were coming to us less prepared than ever. And there's probably a lot of environmental and social factors that were contributing to that and that continue to contribute to that. But we started doubling down on explicit instruction of executive function skills in the elementary school setting for our students. And that got us thinking, well, how are our teachers doing on executive function? We keep this like reverse pyramid keeps happening for us.
Right.
And we started wondering how we could support our teachers with increased executive function skills and helping them be their best. And then the next step was like, well, what about our school leaders? And I actually started doing a little bit of digging into this, and maybe this is a topic for future research somewhere down the line. But we found in very anecdotal ways that the best school leaders are the humans best capable of managing multiple executive functions at a high level. And so that's not to degrade someone who may have a struggle in certain executive function areas, but what we do know is that executive functions are skills and they can be developed. So as much as we think that like, well, I'm great at planning or I'm bad at planning, okay, if you're bad at it, then let's spend some time finding tools to help you be more successful. It's not just overnight going to change, but I think a great practice for a practicing school leader right now would be to give yourself a brief executive function inventory rating, self-evaluate on that front. And maybe if you're brave enough, have someone else that you trust, that's a mentor, that's a peer, that you can kind of be vulnerable with and ask them to give you the same rating scale and determine what are some areas that you're great at. Highlight those, be proud of them, but maybe identify one or two areas that are deficient or that are challenging for you, and then come up with a plan. This is what we would do for a student, right? If we had a student who had an executive function deficit, we're not just going to say, well, that student is really bad at time management, so we're just going to let them turn stuff in late all the time.
Right.
No, we're probably we're going to intervene, and we're going to provide that student support with a visual checklist or with a reminder or with something. We're going to provide some support, and as administrators, maybe we need to provide ourselves some supports that help us be more successful on that front as well.
Right, right. And you stress, by the way, I love the connection between what we teach children and what we need to teach ourselves. And I think about principals too. A lot of times I'll get people call me and say, I actually feel like things are going well at school, but everything's falling apart at home. And that could be part of this executive functioning work. If you're executive functioning your heart out and then you go home and there's nothing to eat for dinner, it's okay to incorporate those types of life things into how you plan your day or how you plan your week, because we do have to have a nice balance there. You stress the importance of common language for teaching and learning, and you have a great perspective on the power of vocabulary. So talk to us about that and how a shared professional vocabulary can fundamentally change the quality and focus of conversations about students.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, I think the bottom line of this common language and common vocabulary goes back to the student experience, right? If we think about going to a chain restaurant, for example, when you go to a chain restaurant in one city and you go to the same chain restaurant in another city, you kind of expect the menu to be the same.
That's right.
You expect the staff to have the same culture and feel and vibe. And that's just kind of, when you go to that place, that's kind of what you expect to have happen. Otherwise, it feels like a different restaurant. It feels like a different place, and you leave wondering, like, I don't think I really understood what just happened there. And they didn't have my
Right.
favorite menu item because I don't know why. It was the same restaurant. So if we take that analogy and bring it back into the school setting, and we think about a secondary school student who changes class periods 7 times a day, we
Mhm.
kind of want them going to the same restaurant, and we need them going to the same restaurant in our school where the menu is the same. The expectations of behavior, for example, are the same. The language of teaching and learning are the same. And that doesn't
Right.
mean that the content is the same, right? If I'm in a Spanish classroom versus a biology classroom, of course I'm going to be learning two separate things, but I want the teachers to be speaking the same language of teaching and learning. In one classroom, we can't be talking about learning targets and another learning intentions. We need to unify that language so that our students are not confused and they're not having to learn 7 different ways to learn. They are all working under the same umbrella of teaching and learning. Or at an elementary school, if we have a citizenship expectation matrix, then we want those expectations to be the same, the broad expectations in every setting, including
Yep.
the bus, the playground, the cafeteria, the music room, the general education classroom. Otherwise, our youngest learners are very confused about, well, I'm expected to do one thing in the cafeteria, but in the gym I can do something different. And Mrs. Thomas has one set of ideas that I need to remember to do in that space, while Mr. Johnson has a separate set of ideas that I need to remember. So the power comes back to the student's experience in learning. We can be more efficient with our time and energy and practices, not only because we're all on the same page and we all have shared beliefs in what we expect out of our students, but our students are more efficacious as learners because they don't have to relearn new things in every place. So a starting place on that front, in terms of unifying that, goes back to a collaborative setting of adults in the space and saying, we all agree that these things are important in all of our spaces. As a principal, I remember hiring new teachers, and one of the first things I told them is, please don't put up your classroom constitution and please don't put up the rules of your classroom, because lucky for you, here you go. We have an agreed upon set of expectations in every space in our school. So we've done the lifting for you, and your
Mhm.
students already know it too. They will come to your space because they've been trained in what the expectations of our school are. We just need you to uphold the things that we're already doing.
Right. And you know what? As you were talking, I was thinking how all of this is tied together. I was thinking about if I go get a chai latte at Starbucks in Boston and I go to get a chai latte at a Starbucks in Seattle and they're very different, I've lost trust in Starbucks. And so same with students. If they lose trust that we know what we're doing, right? And that we're all on the same page, then that has a direct tie to collective efficacy, which has a tie to shared leadership. Like it's all the animal feeds itself if we do have this shared language.
And that's how we track down that elusive collective efficacy. It's hard to pin down, like, how do you make that happen? But what happens is all these little things in isolation build collective trust and lead to efficacy as well.
Right. 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 Absolutely. And so I don't know where time went, Matt, but here we are. And I have a question before we close. If you could distill all your experiences, teacher, coordinator, principal in various settings, professor, consultant, put that into maybe one piece of advice for principals who want to build that more connected, effective school community, what would that advice be?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's lots of moving parts in there. But when I think about that, I think about John C. Maxwell, the leadership guru. He talked about kind of 5 levels of leadership, right? And so
Mhm.
people can go look this up. There may even be a book that's specific to that. It's definitely part of a number of his offerings. But the lowest level of leadership is the position. And that's just the fact that you got the job. You have the title of leader.
Right.
But the ultimate goal, he calls it the pinnacle, and that's that people follow you because of who you are, not because of what your title is. So that's really where we have to get to. And I think of all the positions that I've had an opportunity and a privilege to be part of, and find success in at every step of the way, it wasn't because of the title that I was holding at any point. It was because I found a way to connect with people and make people around me better, rely on them to be their very best, share feedback with one another, and help each other. And that goes both ways. I think at the same time, when we're vulnerable and willing to do that, people help us get better too, because they're willing to share some more honest feedback with us as leaders on how we can help them be successful in a non-combative, non-confrontational way, just like, Matt, you missed the mark on that one, man. Like, how can we fix this? And I'm able to say, wow, I hadn't even seen it that way. Thanks so much for the feedback. We're going to get better at this together. Those ideas help people see you as a leader who is willing to help everybody get better, not just be out for yourself. And where we started, if we bring this full circle, is that idea of shifting away from I and me to ours and we. Those are powerful things to help organizations be successful.
Right. Well, and as you were talking there, a new thought kind of crossed my mind, which is owning those mistakes, right? And part of owning it is not just saying, "Oh, wow, guys, sorry, I messed up on that one. I'll get better." It's partly taking the time to think, how did this misstep affect others? You know, if I made a poor decision or if I didn't react well, okay, I might feel really lousy, but what about the teachers in my school? What about the kids? How is that impact kind of cascading? And then what recognizance, so to speak, do I need to do to make sure that impact on them is either lessened or at the very least acknowledged?
Yeah, so probably a topic for another podcast and another day. But the concept of emotional quotient and emotional intelligence among school leaders is crucial in 2025, and it's everything you just talked about.
Yep, exactly. I was actually meeting with an aspiring principal yesterday, and I'm telling you, Matt, he's going to be great because he has that. He has that. There's so much he doesn't know, but I said to him, you are going to be amazing because of your EQ. You've got it. So let's circle back and do another podcast on that. But
Of
Matt,
course.
thank you so much for this conversation. Your insights on these strategies to elevate student voice and building a leadership ecosystem it's so invaluable for our listeners. It's been fantastic. So for our listeners who want to learn more from you, where is the best place for them to connect with your work?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search my name, Matthew McDaniel, Ph.D. And, if you want to learn more about what we're doing for pre-service leaders, you can check out the College of Idaho's website, which is a small little college in Caldwell, Idaho. But we're doing great things in helping pre-service administrators be their very best selves.
I want to come to Idaho. I want to come and meet your students.
We need to
We
find
have
a
to
way.
we have to make this happen. So yes, we will put links into the show notes for listeners. Dr. McDaniel, thank you so much for your time and the incredible work you're doing for school leaders at every stage of their journey, really. It's been wonderful to have you.
Thanks, Jen and Will, for hosting the podcast.
No problem. And to our amazing community of listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Principal Matters. If this conversation has resonated with you, please share it with another leader in your professional circle. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Principal Matters.